On August 9, 1965, when Singapore's Prime Minister was shedding tears over their expulsion from Malaysia, nobody could have guessed that this tiny port city, struggling with racial tensions and economic hardships, would achieve in decades what took European and North American countries centuries. From a poor and developed South Asian city in the 60s, Singapore soared to one of the highest GDP per capita in the world by the 90s. But why couldn't Gaza, as another small region with about the same density, but with an even more pivotal strategic and geoeconomic location, achieve what Singapore did? Recognized as part of an independent Palestinian state by the United Nations in 1948, Gaza had the potential to thrive much earlier than Singapore. So what exactly made the difference? What was fundamentally missing within Gazans to not be able to follow Singaporeans' path? Was it just because of the conflicts? Well, Singaporeans were in the middle of conflicts too. But how they escaped their disputes with Malaysians and built these eye-catching skyscrapers? If you want to know the answer to these questions and figure out how and why Gaza ended up like this, while Singapore transformed into this, then stick around, because it's coming up. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's Prime Minister, had initially advocated for Malaysian Malaysia in the early 1960s, a concept that called for equal treatment of all races within the newly formed Federation of Malaysia. This vision was grounded in the belief that a unified national identity, free from ethnic and religious hierarchies, was essential for progress and stability. However, this inclusive vision clashed with the United Malays National Organization's ideology of Malay supremacy, which prioritized the political and economic interests of the Malay majority. The resulting tensions escalated and climaxed in the violent race riots of 1964, which underscored the deep-seated ethnic divisions and conflicting aspirations between the Malay majority government and the more diverse population of Singapore. During these riots, significant violence erupted, leading to deaths and injuries on both sides. Many Chinese residents in Singapore were targeted, resulting in numerous casualties and a heightened sense of insecurity among the Chinese population. The riots emphasized the impossibility of reconciling UMNO's insistence on Malay dominance bolstered by Islamic ideology with Lee Kuan Yew's commitment to a multiracial society. Some extremist Malay politicians and clerics viewed Buddhist Chinese as heretics or threat to their Islamic beliefs. And surprise, surprise, guys, one of the bloodiest clashes happened right on the birthday celebration of the first Muslim thug, Muhammad bin Abdullah, the Prophet of Muslims. This stark ideological contrast between UMNO's Malay-centric governance and Singapore's inclusive approach based on meritocracy and equality and its consequent turbulence led to Singapore's separation from Malaysia, which was enforced by UNMO in 1965. The separation of Singapore was not just a geopolitical event, it was deeply contentious and perceived as outrageous by many. Overnight, Singapore was pushed and thrust into independence, breaking off critical ties that had been deeply intertwined for years. The forced separation disrupted vital resources like water supply and trade routes, essential for Singapore's economic and social stability. Following the expulsion, Lee Kuan Yew focused on nation building and fostering social harmony in Singapore. He introduced policies aimed at racial integration and equality, including public housing initiatives that required ethnic quotas to ensure mixed communities. Education reforms emphasized multiculturalism, and the government worked tirelessly to promote a national identity that transcended racial lines. Lee's pragmatic approach and dedication to meritocracy, secularity, and social cohesion helped to quell racial tensions and set Singapore on a path toward rapid economic development. By the 1970s, Singapore's economy was on the upswing. The country's strategic location, combined with its business-friendly policies, attracted multinational corporations. Industries like electronics, petrochemicals, and financial services began to flourish. After a few years, Singapore experienced remarkable economic development, surpassing Malaysia in GDP per capita and becoming a beacon of success in Southeast Asia. This growth attracted workers from across the region, including Malaysia, to fill the labor demands of Singapore's expanding industries. Singapore's development model not only demonstrated the benefits of economic pragmatism and governance, but also influenced policies beyond its borders. Leaders such as Deng Xiaoping of China and others in Southeast Asia looked to Singapore as a model of successful economic transformation. Even within Malaysia, leaders took note, gradually adopting pragmatic economic policies that diversified their economy. Today, Malaysia embraces sectors like tourism, featuring attractions and facilities that cater to diverse preferences, illustrating a shift towards a more secular economic landscape, slowly pushing away their Islamic rigidity. But still today, the average Singaporean enjoys a significantly higher income and standard of living than their Malaysian counterparts. Instead of waging fruitless wars against Malaysia, Singaporeans focused on building a robust economy, ultimately defeating Malaysians in terms of wealth. Lee Kuan Yew, despite being of Chinese descent and leading a predominantly Chinese population, refrained from exploiting ethnic or religious nationalism to fuel conflict against Malaysia, which had cut off resources following their separation. Instead, he and Singapore chose the path of development and prosperity, opting for pragmatic solutions and economic growth over the destructive lure of conflict and antagonism. Unlike Singapore, Gaza has been mired in a cycle of conflict and poverty, shaped largely by the prevailing ideology of resistance and Islamic Jihadism against Israel. This contrast began to crystallize in the 1940s when the United Nations recognized Palestine as a separate state alongside Israel. Instead of pursuing peaceful coexistence, though, many factions within Palestine declared jihad against Israel, seeking to reclaim land they believed was rightfully theirs. This choice set Gaza on a path of repeated conflicts and economic regression. Every time Palestine chose to fight rather than make peace, the consequences were dire. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War saw Gaza losing more territory, a pattern that continued through subsequent conflicts. Rather than achieving their goal, each war brought further destruction and hardship to their people and loss of more lands. The Oslo Accords in the 1990s marked a significant opportunity for Gaza's economic development. These agreements offered the promise of peace and economic growth in exchange for recognizing Israel and ending hostilities. In the late 1990s, Gaza had a fleeting chance to transform itself economically by capitalizing on this opportunity. In 1999 until September 2000, every economic expert was talking about Gaza becoming the next Singapore. Marriott International was planning to build a large 5-star hotel on the beach in the north of Gaza. The area's industrial zone was flourishing with Israeli and Palestinian-owned factories, employing thousands of Gazans. Representatives of the Israeli and Palestinian Ministries of Trade and Industry, together with the private sectors, were showcasing the planned Kearney Industrial Zone and doing roadshows worldwide. In May 2000, they convened a conference of over 100 farmers and agriculture officials from Egypt, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel at the Palestine Hotel in Gaza City to work on an agricultural cooperation protocol. However, rather than embracing these chances for stability and growth from the Oslo Accords, Gaza's leadership, mainly Hamas, frequently reverted to violence, viewing any compromise as betrayal of their cause. And then on September 28, 2000, Israeli leader Ariel Sharon staged a controversial visit with hundreds of policemen and women protecting him to the Temple Mount or Al-Aqsa Mosque. And then all hell broke out just because Muslims hate to see a non-Muslim visiting Al-Aqsa Mosque. That sounds so apartheid to me. How about to you? Over the next years, the horror of the Second Intifada, or Palestinian uprising, shook both Palestinian and Israeli lives, with thousands killed and enormous damage to everyone's lives and livelihood. In 2004, Yasser Arafat died and Mahmoud Abbas was elected in 2005 to take over the Palestinian Authority. Soon after, Israel disengaged from Gaza. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon refused to cooperate and coordinate the disengagement with the Palestinian Authority or even with the international coordination body. 1 year later, Hamas won the Palestinian parliamentary elections on the ticket of taking credit for forcing Israel to leave Gaza. Following the withdrawal of Israeli forces and settlers from Gaza in 2005, instead of capitalizing on this moment to build infrastructure and improve living standards, Hamas intensified its militant activities. This led to repeated cycles of violence, with rocket attacks on Israeli civilians prompting severe retaliatory measures from Israel. So Israel had to control imports and exports from and to Gaza to limit Hamas' capability of manufacturing weapons. Despite these restrictions, Israel allowed aid funds from Arab countries to flow into Gaza. These blockades and restrictions have just crippled Gaza's economy, leading to skyrocketing unemployment and poverty rates. Before the latest conflict, in 2023, Israel had issued approximately 20,000 work permits to Gazans, allowing them to work within Israel. This marked a significant increase compared to previous years and was part of an effort to provide economic relief and opportunities for Gazan workers. There were also several hundred Gazan high-techies employed by Israeli companies. But then on October 7th, Hamas just had to ruin it all once and for all. The dream of Gaza and Singapore got flushed down the toilet of Islamic Jihadism. And you know what? That's exactly what Hamas as a devout Islamic group really wanted deep down. Because an economically developed region can't produce enough brainwashed folks willing to suicide bomb or martyr themselves over Islam, jihad, or the so-called cause of free Palestine. Remember, extremism and terrorism often thrive best in poverty. While terrorism is deeply rooted in Islamic ideology through concepts like jihad and martyrdom, prosperous economic conditions can discourage individuals from blindly following such Islamist beliefs. For instance, consider how many terrorists have come from developed Islamic countries like Turkey, Qatar, Dubai, or the UAE, compared to the numbers from impoverished areas like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Palestine. If you want to see how terrorism is deeply rooted in history of Islam and Muhammad's practices, watch this clip of ours where we explain the horrible acts of terror persuaded directly by Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. Hamas' actions, driven by ideology, have continually undermined the potential for peace and prosperity in Gaza. The dominant ideology in Gaza is rooted in Islamic Jihadism, which is deeply entrenched in the Quran and the teachings of their Prophet Muhammad. The Quran contains numerous verses that condemn the Jews or the Banu Israel, portraying them as dissidents, heretics, or even enemies of Allah. This ideology has been used to justify violence and terrorism against Israelis who are seen as non-Muslims and therefore as enemies of the faith. If you want to understand how exactly Islam and other Abrahamic beliefs play a fundamental role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, watch this clip of ours. Yes, I know Israel as a whole isn't completely faultless in this cycle of violence and poverty afflicting Gaza. The blockades and other extreme policies mostly imposed by extremist Jewish factions have undoubtedly played a role. But the extreme actions of Gazans and Palestinians have also strengthened the position of hardline groups in Israel. However, remember that Singapore too was under a heavy blockade by Malaysia in the beginning of the separation. Singapore was even cut off from its water supply coming from Malaysia. But Israel continued providing Gaza with gas, electricity, and water supplies uninterrupted during truce until October 7, 2023. Because Singapore's leaders chose to coexist peacefully with Malaysia despite the cruelties imposed by UNMO, things eventually turned around. Today, they're friendly and rather well-developed nations coexisting side by side. Moreover, Singaporeans took steps to establish friendly relations even with Japan, fostering mutual economic benefits only 2 decades after the horrific Sukching massacre in 1942, where approximately 50,000 Singaporeans were killed by the Japanese. The main difference between Gaza and Singapore, my friends, boils down to the contrasting mentalities dominating their people and leaders. In Singapore, there is a relentless desire for economic progress and improving the quality of life in the here and now. In Gaza, a destructive obsession to destroy Israel, even at the expense of their own lives, dominates. While one side seeks a happier life in the current and actually existing world where they can live it for real, the other side is delusionally willing to ruin their real current life in this actually proven to exist world over an illusionary life in a not yet proven to exist hereafter.
نصير لازم نقدمها وحنقدمها مرة ثانية وثالثة، ومش هذا حتكون طوفان الأقصى أول مرة، لا حتكون ثانية وثالثة ورابعة، لأنه إحنا لدينا إصرار ولدينا قرار ولدينا إمكانيات أن نقاتل ونحارب. لكن كما قلت لك بدنا ندفع ثمن. نعم إحنا مستعدين. معلش بدي أقول لك بشكل واضح، إحنا اسمنا شعب الشهداء ونفخر أن نقدم شهداء.
And all that catastrophic mentality is stemmed from just the Islamic propaganda that states Al-Aqsa Mosque and Jerusalem is too sanctified to let non-Muslims have control over it. At the very end of the clip, I will share with you a beautiful poem by Khayyam, a well-known Sufi poet that exactly criticized this kind of mentality in Islam. But before that, thanks for watching, sharing, and liking this clip. Let us know in the comments what you think about our analytical comparison of Gaza and Singapore today. Till later, peace.
Some say that heaven with houris is so sweet. I say that sweet is the grape juice at our feet. Take the cash and let go of any credit. The grass on the other side always looks neat.